about Seaquest Southwest. So for those of you that don't know much about Seaquest Southwest, we are a citizen science project that's run by the Cornwall Wildlife Trust's marine team. And this is our 8th webinar that we have been running, and we're just doing these for lockdown. So we've got a huge team of trained volunteers who conduct marine megafauna surveys for us, and that's from cliffs all around Cornwall. So we have volunteers that basically are spread all over the whole of the county, and we get amazing data from them. Normally we have a huge packed programme of events sort of going on throughout our year, which includes talks and training, but unfortunately we can't do a lot of that at the moment. So instead we are running these webinars each week. All our past webinars are available on the Cornwall Wildlife Trust Marine Team YouTube channel, so you can see all the other ones if you've missed any of them, and this one will be uploaded to there shortly. So next week, our next webinar, we have Hannah from Marine Discovery Penzance, who will be telling us all about the amazing stuff that they get to see in Mounts Bay, and tickets will be available for that shortly. But first, today we have Jenny Simpson. So she's the head guide for Padstow Sealife Safaris. She's also actively involved in various marine conservation projects around Cornwall, including the Cornwall Seal Group, British Divers Marine Life Rescue, and regularly conducts surveys for Seaquest Southwest. So we're delighted to have Jenny talk for us today, and we're really looking forward to hearing all about the amazing stuff that they get to see in Padstow Bay. So take it away, Jenny.
Thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone, and good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Lots of familiar faces and some not so familiar faces, but thank you for joining. If you don't know me, my name's Jenny. As Claire said, I work for Padstow Sealife Safaris, and I'm just going to tell you a few little stories of my experiences working for the Sealife Safaris over the last few years. I don't have time to talk about all the species that I'd like to, but if there's anything I haven't touched on that you'd like to ask some questions about, there'll be plenty of time at the end if you want to ask anything, or if there's anything you'd like to chat to me about at all. So some of you know me quite well, some of you don't know me at all and never heard of me, so here's just a little bit of an introduction to me. So this is me. I am from Aberdeen, up in the northeast of Scotland, born and raised, and there I studied international tourism management at Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen, a year of which I spent in Orlando, Florida, working at Walt Disney World on an internship. However, by the end of my course, I decided I was really much more interested in wildlife. So moved down to Cornwall. I'd never been to Cornwall in my life before until I moved here. So I moved to Cornwall to study zoological conservation at Cornwall College in Newquay. Originally just really interested in a bit of all different sorts of wildlife, but actually by the end of it, I was partially thanks to Bex and partially just living right on the sea and being able to see some magnificent marine life right on our doorstep, and really got interested in the marine side of it, so marine vertebrates, marine megafauna. After graduating from Cornwall College Newquay, I went away travelling, so did lots of different interesting things. This is me in Costa Rica working on turtle conservation. These are little leatherback turtle hatchlings. I am wearing a top in that picture, which you can't see, it's got no straps. There's a bit of turtle conservation. I've been to Holland doing an internship working at a seal rehabilitation rescue centre there. For those of you that have any experience of working with grey seals, might be surprised by these photos. The common seals that are predominantly rescued there, and there are some greys as well, but the common seals are a lot friendlier and a lot less angry. After that, I got my job working at Padstow Sealife Safaris. I worked there for 6 months, thinking it was just a summer job, and then headed off to New Zealand, working on dolphin boat tours there, and worked there for 6 months. And despite all the amazing marine life we saw there, as well as the dusky dolphins, there were Hector's dolphins, orca, sperm whales, albatross, and all sorts of amazing wildlife. My heart was really in Cornwall by that point, so I moved back, and I've been here ever since. Active, as Claire said already, I'm an active volunteer with the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust, Minke Marine Group, and during our boat trips, I take the opportunity to record new sightings and send them into Seaquest Southwest. So I work for Padstow Sealife Safaris. Obviously, we operate out of Padstow, and you can see the little red star where we operate from. So we run rib trips. Ribs are not for everybody. They're not for the faint-hearted or the brittle-boned. And we do a bit of bouncing around the coast. And this is the area of coastline that we cover. So it's quite a wide area, all the way from Trevor's Head down the bottom left corner there, up to Tintagel Head from the top right. So we'll cover right into the coast, looking for seals and little coast and caved areas, birds nesting up on the ledges. Just inland from the Gulland Island, which is pointed out there, there's some nesting ledges for kittiwakes. We also visit these islands, which I've marked out. I'll tell you a little bit more about what we find in those in a sec. And we head further offshore to look for cetaceans, like predominantly common dolphins, the most common cetacean that we see. We'll see harbour porpoises. Occasionally we'll see bottlenose dolphins and bristlenose dolphins as well. We get sightings of Minke whales. And heading towards these islands that I've pointed out, they're quite difficult to see on Google Maps there. We do visit the quays, which actually don't show on Google Maps. They're just to the left of Trevor's Head there. It's quite tricky to get there in most wells because there's a lot of tidal movement around Trevor's Head, so we don't get there too often. But the Gulland Island is a popular spot for us to visit. Hundreds of guillemots and razorbills nesting there in the spring and summer months. Shags and cormorants nest there, and got lots of gull species. Of course, the name Gull Land certainly suggests that. And it's a popular haul-out site for bay seals as well. They tend to favour the Gulland Island around the spring and the autumn months, and we see less of them there during the summer. I'm not really sure why they favour different spots at different times. Newland Island, the next one along, is quite a steep-sided island, so it's not as ideal as the Gullands and the Moles for hauling out for seals and for nesting ledges for the birds. We do see some of both, but not nearly as much as on the other islands. We don't tend to visit it quite as much, but that's the island that you'll see as you immediately leave the estuary, the Camel estuary. And then just off the rumps of Pentire Point there is Moles Island. So there, again, we get hundreds of guillemots and razorbills during their breeding season. And it's a great haul-out spot for seals. They tend to favour moles in the summer months, especially pregnant females. We get lots of girlies hanging out there and looking very fat during the summer. And lots of other bird species using that as a little perch point or a nesting site. And of course, Moles Island, also nicknamed Puffin Island. So it's actually the last remaining site that puffins nest in Cornwall. They used to nest all across parts of Cornwall, and now that's the last site that they're found nesting. And so we're really quite privileged that we're able to see puffins. I'm just going to start off with them actually, because for us, puffins aren't anything particularly unusual. I'm going to tell you a little bit about more of our unusual sightings or rarer things that we don't see as much. But for us, puffins aren't really unusual. We'll see them from about mid-April through to mid-July, sometimes as early as late March. We'll start to see the puffins showing up around Moles Island, and the water's just offshore. But for many people, puffins are incredibly rare to see, and they're a really special species. A lot of people come out on our trips wanting to see seals and dolphins, and they're really not too fussed about birds, which is a shame. We try to get them more enthused about birds, but the puffins always steal the show when it comes to birds. Everyone wants to see the puffin just because they're so adorable in their appearance, with their colours and their size as well. Everyone's always quite surprised at just how dinky they are. You can't quite get a perspective of their size when you just see them close up in a picture, but everyone's always quite surprised at just how diddy they are. So no one's exactly sure how many puffins we do have. The current figures from the Cornwall Bird Watching and Preservation Society is 9 pairs, but because they're never all out of their burrows at once, they're really tricky to count. So recent counts have seen up to 15 individuals, either on the island or on the water this year. So there's certainly a few of them around. Their numbers aren't dwindling on this island. They've never been particularly numerous on this island. So the colony is fairly steady, and hopefully they'll continue to hang around for many years to come, because it's really special that we're still continuing to get them nesting here where they've abandoned other sites, perhaps due to predation or loss of their habitat. They're having difficulty finding food, but we're really lucky that they continue to come back here, so fingers crossed they continue to come back for years to come. Best time for seeing puffins is in the morning. First thing in the morning, they'll all be outside their burrows on the islands, and then by the time we get there, just after 10, they're usually sitting out on the water, flying back and forth to their burrows. And usually by about lunchtime, they've headed offshore to find more food, so we tend not to see them later in the afternoon until maybe a little bit later in the season. Another of my favourite species is the ocean sunfish, because they're just such an oddball. They don't look like if you drew a little cartoon of a fish, this is not what you would draw. So they're quite an oddity, but we just love them. So they start to show up for us around July and August time, usually perhaps into June. This year, actually, they've been showing up as early as May. So, and we've seen them right through until October, but it's usually the summer months that they're predominantly be seen, and they're so easy to spot. In these waters, they go up to about the size of a dustbin lid, and they've got that beautiful shiny silver colour to them. And as they lay on their side at the surface, warming themselves in the sun after a deep dive, or allowing the gulls to nibble the parasites off their skin, you'll see that dorsal fin flopping from side to side. So they just have tiny little pectoral fins on either side. Not much of a tail, just sort of this rigid fringe along the back of their bodies, but their dorsal fin and anal fin are just very large, and as they lay on the surface, that dorsal fin just flops and waves, so they're really easy to spot. Because they are a slow-moving species, they do accumulate a lot of parasites on their skin, so sometimes we'll even see them leaping clean out the water and splashing down on their sides as they make impact on the water, try and knock those parasites off. And we love spotting them leaping out the water. I do love the looks on the passengers' faces as they leap out the water, and they're like, oh, was that a dolphin? And you're like, oh no, it's a sunfish. And they look quite disappointed that it was a fish instead of a dolphin. But once you start to tell them a little bit about them, they seem a little bit more enthused, because they're such amazing creatures. They've remained relatively unchanged since before the time of the dinosaurs, and so they must be doing something right, whatever it is. And the fact that they grow up to 10 feet across in tropical waters, it's just amazing. And they're also the most fecund fish of all fish. They produce more eggs than any other fish species, up to 3 million at a time. So they've got a lot going on for them. They're quite amazing animals, and we really love to see them. Now, the basking shark, you wouldn't think would be anything unusual or anything rare. If you think of marine species in Cornish waters, you probably quite quickly think of a basking shark. However, for us, they're really not common sighting. So Ian, who's the owner of the business, he's been working on the sea his whole life. He used to work fishing boats with his dad and on the speedboats in Padstow, and him and other local people told me stories about dozens of basking sharks out around the Gulland Islands, out in Harland Bay, sometimes even just outside of the estuary, swimming around in huge numbers, and they would get fabulous sightings of basking sharks in the summer months. However, now, as the water is getting warmer, the plankton that they feed on is moving further offshore and further north into colder waters. They do get that cooler stream, the cold water stream that comes closer in around sort of Porthcurno, ascending kind of way into Mounts Bay. So we tend to see them there a little bit more than we do on the north coast still. But actually, this is the only basking shark I've seen in 6 years of working for the company. I've seen one only basking shark. These were all taken on the same day, just the sun came out for the bottom left picture as the shark very quickly saw a mouse up to the boat, and so that's why the picture's a little bit blurry. It took me by surprise, and it was difficult to focus as it swam right alongside us. But it gave us a perspective of the size of the animal. It was about 6 meters alongside our 10-meter boat. So they're really just stunning animals to see, and I wish we could see more of them. There've actually been quite a few sightings throughout lockdown while we've all been stuck indoors. In fact, one at Port Gavern, which is just next door to Port Isaac, so right on our patch. So I'm really hoping that this will be the year that we start to see more of them again, because unfortunately they've become quite a rarity. But this was one of my top 3 days on the boat. Very exciting. Again, Minke whales, not hugely rare in Cornwall. They're frequently sighted around our coast. However, for us in Padstow Bay, they never used to be a common sighting. As I mentioned, my boss working out on he spent his life working out on the boats and had never really seen minke whales just until recent years. And my first 3 years working for the company, I'd never seen one. And then 4 years ago, we were out in the boat and something popped up next to the boat and it was a minke whale. And I was just beside myself. That year we saw 5 sightings of minke whales all throughout April. The following year, we had more sightings. We had about 2 to 3 sightings a week throughout sort of maybe the second week of April into early May. One of which we had at least 2 individuals swimming around just off Port Isaac. One which breached out the water just offshore, just not that far out of Port Isaac Harbour actually, and another one swam right under our boat. We're all looking to the right, waiting for it to surface again, and then we just to our left heard a of the blow as it came up next to the boat. So absolutely stunning to see. And last year we had more sightings than ever before. So not only did we see them in April and May, but we had a couple of sightings in June, and we had sightings in July and August as well, one each month. So not only are they showing up more, but more throughout the year as well. So obviously there's plenty for them to eat in the bay, so it's a really good indicator of a healthy food chain, and great for us because passengers love to eat. Now, up until last year, minke whale was the only whale species I'd seen from the boat until this showed up. So we were out in the boat one day travelling along. We spotted something. There was some kind of commotion in the water. So we cruised along, and then a whale surfaced. And I was like, oh, a minke whale. Wow, a very big minke whale. And then I realised as it came up again, I was like, there's no way that's a minke whale. It's far too big. Having never seen a sei whale before, I'd never seen a fin whale before, I knew it could be one of the two, perhaps a small fin whale or a sei whale. And it wasn't until I managed to get the footage back to the office that I could check the dorsal fin and confirm that it was a sei whale. They're actually an endangered species. There's only about 50,000 of them in the world, and only about 12,000 in the North Atlantic population. So not a common sighting around our waters. So absolutely thrilling to be able to see it. This is the same trip in which we'd seen, just before this, we'd seen a mother and calf common dolphin, and we see lots of calves, but this one was quite special because it looked like it had just been born earlier that day. Its little dorsal fin was flopped over its body, and you could see milk trailing from the mother as she'd just been feeding it, and it was having to leap out the water to take a breath. So that was stunning in itself, and then we go further offshore and we're treated to seeing a sei whale. So for the next trip we had high hopes. We thought, oh amazing, wait till you guys see what we've got out there, and we got out and we didn't see anything. So it just shows you how fickle marine life can be. Just because you have one good trip doesn't mean the next one's going to play ball for you. So the next species that's taken us by surprise was Atlantic bluefin tuna. So they used to be quite prevalent in our waters, and they were fished to the point of almost disappearing completely out of British waters around the 90s, and they've not really been seen much since. Until recent years, sightings have been starting to be reported, and we started to hear some whispers from local fishermen of sightings of what they thought was bluefin tuna last year and a bit the year before as well. We had a couple of trips where we were out and we saw some splashes in the water, and couldn't really tell if that's exactly what it was, but had an inkling that perhaps maybe that's what it was. And then finally we came across this. So we were out where we would generally encounter minke whales, where we had been seeing them, and we saw a splash in the water. We saw a splash in the water and then nothing, and then a splash in the water and then nothing for a while. And I was like, I'm not sure, it looks like a minke whale, but it could be. So just to kind of fill the time while we were waiting for this, whatever it was, to surface again, I'm chatting on about minke whales for a while. And then they all start leaping out of the water like this, and I realised that I've been talking nonsense for ages. These are tuna. So really stunning to see. They're absolutely massive, but the size of a dolphin. So really amazing to see, but I think the passengers may have been a little bit disappointed when I'm chatting on about whales and then, oh, it's fish. But hopefully they realise just what an amazing sighting it is to see an endangered species such as this making him come back into our waters and having a feeding frenzy in front of our eyes, and so hopefully some of my excitement rubbed off onto them. So porpoises, harbour porpoises are not anything unusual or uncommon, but if anyone has been on a boat and tried to take a picture of a harbour porpoise, you will know that it's not easy. They're not particularly attracted to boats. They tend to be quite shy around boats. They'll surface 2 to 3 times and then they'll kind of go quite quiet again. So they're not really that easy to photograph, certainly nothing compared to common dolphin, for example. In about 6 years, this is the best I've managed to get of these porpoises. So you can imagine how hard, apart that's difficult to get a picture of a regular porpoise, how hard this must be to photograph. So this is what's known as the ghost porpoise. And hands in the air, I actually haven't seen it myself. So this picture was taken by Ian just from his phone. But you can see just how distinctive it is. So this is a leucistic animal, meaning it's lacking pigmentation and to have that dark coloration that other porpoises have. So it shows up as bright white. And there have been a few sightings of it around Cornwall, and a few years back, 4 years back now, and was our first sighting of it. And it seems to continuously elude me. We spotted it quite a few times in the boat now, but it continues to elude me. And this was the best photo we had of it until a girl that I know, Sarah, she's runs Checker Photography, and she came out in the boat with us, and she managed to get this fabulous photo. If you haven't spotted it right away, it's just over there, looking to the left, blending in fabulously with the glare and the glassy water there. So I know I haven't seen it myself, but I thought it was just such a fabulous individual, an amazing picture of it, that I thought you might want to see. Another thing that I didn't take a picture of is the thresher shark. This is actually a picture from Rob Hughes of Devon Sea Safari, but we did see one out on the boat, so it was 3 years ago now, and tell a lie, 4 years ago, 4 years ago, and we were out on the boat on a November afternoon. It was early November, beautiful calm seas, and we were having an amazing trip. We'd come out of the estuary, we turned right around Padstow Point, we encountered some porpoises. They tend to come quite close to shore in the autumn when the herring moves in and out the river, so they were quite close in feeding, and we got some lovely views. We headed over to Mole's Island to look for some seals. Didn't see any seals there, so we carried on, found a pod of common dolphins. Lovely, had a lovely encounter with them. Then we left the dolphins to it, and we thought, oh, well, we've still got some time. We'll head over to the Gulland Island to see if we can spot some seals there. As we're travelling along, every passenger on the boat's looking to their right, bar one lady who was looking to her left, and watched she'd leap out of the water on her right-hand side, but a thresher shark. I just saw something out the corner of my eye and thought, oh, dolphin, and then I looked and I was like, whoa, it's a shark, leaping vertically in the air with its belly facing towards us. And it was so fast, it wasn't easy to tell exactly what it was, but through a process of elimination of the shark species that are found in these waters, the thresher sharks, not uncommon in these waters at all, but just not generally seen, because unlike the basking shark, they don't feed at the surface, and unlike a dolphin, they don't need to come to the surface to breathe, so they're generally in deeper water and further offshore as well. But we reckon that they'd come closer into shore to feed on the herring that the porpoises were after as well. And thresher sharks leap vertically, whereas another species you get in these waters that breach is the Minke shark, and they sort of twist as they leap. So it seems that it was thresher shark that we've seen, so making a leap out of the water very similar to this. And that's probably in my top 3 trips of all time. I was absolutely thrilled to see something like that, and it's probably going to be a one-off. I can't imagine that repeating itself. But we headed over to the Gulland and we saw some seals as well, so it was an unbelievable trip, and some very lucky passengers that day. Now the grey seal is not an unusual sighting for us at all. In fact, they're our bread and butter. We can't guarantee that they will be around all the time, but they are around most of the time. they're generally creatures of habit, and they have their favourite places they like to hang out and be in the water, falling out onto the rocks. And these are just 3 of my favourite seals that we spot. So through the Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust, I do seal IDing, and I've gotten to know some of our seals that we see very well. Some seals will just pass through and pop up onto the rocks for one day, and we may not see them again. But some seals are regular visitors, and we'll see them again and again. And it's really nice to recognise them and get to know them. So the one on the top left is Fatima. So I've been seeing her since the first year I started working with Seaquest Safaris. First I did her as a male because she's very plain and dark, but she's got that little brown head with a short straight nose, which shows that she's female. So she's actually really distinctive, and I can often spot her without the binoculars or without taking a photo. She's quite distinctive to me, although Sue thinks she's really difficult to ID, but I can spot her a mile off. And she's still coming back to this day. She likes to hang out on Moles Island, and she's sort of one of the girls that hang out there in the summer. Another one of the girls in the bottom right is a curly elephant. So we've been seeing her since she was a juvenile, and now she's a beautiful adult, and we've been seeing her this year, or last year rather, sorry, big and fat and pregnant. So lovely to see her doing really well. She's got this kind of swirly pattern on her neck. It's like 2 swirls of an elephant ear and then a kind of trunk shape in between. Why she's called curly elephant. And we see her more than any other seal. So we've recorded sightings of her 96 times. So we've seen her more than any other seal, and she's definitely one of my favourites. And then bottom left there's Lucky Bunting. Some of you might know the story of Lucky Bunting. If you don't, she was first spotted as a juvenile, and she had a ghost gear entanglement. So she had fishing gear wrapped around her neck, digging into her skin. And she was tracked by the Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust. They kept an eye on her until finally she came onto a beach that was accessible. So the British Divers Marine Life Rescue got onto the beach, cut her free, and she's gone on to live a happy, healthy life. She's now reached maturity, and she's been canoodling with lots of boys over the winter. So she's definitely been having making the best of her second chance at life. And she's really distinctive, so she has this kind of scarring around her neck still from where that netting was. So she's really easy to spot, and she hangs out on the Gulland Island quite a bit. So really nice to see her doing well. And this is how we'll normally see seals, laying on the rocks, hauled out, chilling out, or bobbing around in the water like this one. However, one seal decided to behave a little bit differently one day, and you'll shortly see why. So this is some footage from the boat from Ian's camera phone, and you can see there's an adult male bull seal. Hopefully you're able to see this. He's swimming along with common dolphins surfacing very close to him. So first of all, it's really unusual to see a adult male seal this close to the boat. Generally, seals that come this close to the boat are curious little juveniles. It's also really unusual to see dolphins in such close proximity to seals, something we've never seen before. It's also really unusual to see dolphins in such close proximity to this island. We tend not to see them that close in. Why they were behaving in this way, we don't know. Whether the dolphins were trying to feed on something that the seal was trying to feed on, and the dolphins were trying to noise them up and scare them off, or if there was something else in the water that was spooking them both. We really don't know. But the seal wasn't very happy, and he was obviously quite stressed out. He was starting to lunge at the boat. He didn't look very happy, so we decided the best thing to do was to gently move away and give him some space and remove ourselves from the equation. So we decided to move away from the seal, leave him to it, but he didn't want us to go. And we looked round, and he's swimming right towards us. So we stopped the boat to see what he's up to, and he's swimming towards us. A little bit closer, a little bit closer. Oh, hello! And here he is, popping his flippers up on the side of the boat. Little boy doesn't need his binoculars anymore because he's giving him a very close-up view. And I didn't think for 1 second he was ever going to come any closer than that. But he did. Starts to pull himself up onto the boat. I've never seen a seal get on a boat with people on it before. And usually the only reason that they would do this is if something was scaring them in the water. which is maybe why the dolphins were acting so strange, or maybe it's the dolphins that scared the seal. And whatever the case, he decided that our boat was the best place to be. And here he is trying to get even further onto the boat. So we had to pull the other boat alongside. We had to evacuate people onto the bow of the other boat, just in case the seal made his way all the way in. So here I am with a bucket trying to convince him that he is better off in the water, not with us. So I thought something nice and sturdy, so if he bites, he doesn't bite anything of mine. Meanwhile, Kev, the skipper at the back there, is trying to shove him with his foot. But a seal, adult male grey seal, can go up to about 300 kilos, so they are not easy to shift. And it took us a good few minutes of pestering him until he decided he was better off in the water. And we came back later on and found him perched on the island, so we'd found a nice place to relax, but not before traumatising a few children. And I spent the rest of the trip trying to convince them that seals are actually really nice and they're not terrifying. But they weren't too sure, and I think it was going to take them a little bit longer to get over the whole experience. But certainly a close encounter with a seal that they won't forget. Some other scary things that we find in the water. So ghost gear, monofilament net. We see lots of this floating around in the sea, and we do our best to retrieve it. Unfortunately, we don't always retrieve it in time, and it can entangle some animals. So top right here is an adult male grey seal that we'd spotted with some rope around his neck. And he was known to the seal group at the time and had been living with this entanglement for quite some time. I mentioned with lucky bunting, her entanglement is potentially fatal as a juvenile because they're still growing and it's going to get tighter and tighter. Although this does seem comfortably tight, it isn't going to get any tighter than that. And he was surviving quite well with this entanglement, still managing to feed and keep himself going. Bottom left there is a guillemot with its winter plumage all tangled up in some ghost gear. At first we thought he was just sitting on top of where the ghost gear was, and then quickly realised he was actually really badly entangled. So we got the bird onto the boat and managed to cut it free. And unfortunately for this bird, it was actually completely unhurt. We thought it would have dug in somewhere, gave the bird a quick check over, and there was no injury, so he was just a bit knackered from struggling in it. So we let him go, and he quite happily swam off. Not all animals are that lucky, however, and we did one day come across a gannet which had become entangled in some ghost gear and had obviously drowned and was floating dead inside the netting. We needed to remove the netting because we didn't want the same thing to happen to another animal, but I felt really cautious of upsetting any passengers, especially children on board, and exposing them to something quite upsetting. However, it was important for them to see it because it is harsh reality for marine life, and it is a real threat to them. And the very next day we received a tweet from a passenger saying, Jenny, you've inspired the next generation after your safari. My son was determined to get this ghost gear out of the sea. So had they not seen that the day before, they might have thought nothing of seeing a bit of a fishing net on the beach, but because it hit home with them and hit a nerve, this little boy was not going to come home until he'd done his bit to help the marine life and potentially save an animal in need. So that was really nice and really rewarding. And with that little happy ending, I'm just about out of time. I realised there are quite a few species I haven't even touched on. I haven't even really talked about dolphins, which is quite unusual for me. But if anyone has any questions or anything they want to me to talk a little bit about, then please feel free to send your questions in to Claire, and she'll pass them on to you. Thanks for listening, and I hope you find it interesting.
Thank you very much, Jenny. It was great. It was so nice to hear all these little stories. I can't believe that seal actually climbed up on the boat with you. That was amazing.
Neither can I. It was, it was one of those like, what do we do?
Yeah, I can imagine, especially when you've got a boat full of people and a massive seal.
Well, yeah, my only fear was he was going to end up all the way in the boat, and then how do you get him out? So fortunately, he didn't get any further in, and we managed to sort of coax him away.
We don't have any questions yet, so if anyone does have any questions, just pop them into the chat at the bottom. You can see it's in the middle of the bottom, and I will say them to Jenny. But we do have a couple of comments. So Sarah said, I think she wrote this when you were talking about sunfish, these fish are so cool. Oh, let me get back up. These fish are so cool. Would love to see them. They are really cool.
Yeah, and you can actually see them from the coast in the summer as well, so always worth keeping an eye out. We do see them on the boat, so you know, you're welcome to come out anytime, or with any other operators in Cornwall. But yeah, you can see them from the coast. So in the summer months, especially around July, August, keep an eye out. They're quite easy to spot because they're just round and silvery. You'll see the dorsal fin kind of waving at the surface, so worth keeping an eye out for them.
And Christine said it was really interesting, great story about the seal. And we do have some questions now. So Sarah said, do you operate all year round?
So we generally run from about late March until early November. We tend to not run really in the winter time because it's just too rough for us to go out. And we would if we could, but it's A, too cold, and it's B, usually too rough. But we do run for most of the year, so it's usually from about the last week in March through to about the first week in November.
And you're going to be operating hopefully from July this year?
Yeah, so we will start. We could have started a bit earlier, but we're going to wait and start in July. I think early July. Once the accommodation starts to open up again, because we generally tend to attract people from other places for our tours. So we don't want people coming to Padstow from too far afield and attracting too much to the town. So we're going to wait until things start to open up a little bit in July. So probably 4th of July will be open now.
And we've got a question from Katie Bellman. She said, awesome talk. Thank you. What is your favourite marine species, and what is the #1 species you want to see that you have not seen?
Thanks, Katie. I've got 2 on my list I really want to see, and they're probably my 2 favourites as well. So the humpback whale, I know it's a long shot, but one did pop up last summer down in Minke Bay, so you never know. They do pop up around Cornwall, so who knows? I have seen them before in New Zealand. One was really quite far away, it was about 400 metres away breaching, and one popped up right next to our boat, but I would love to see one from our boat. They're just the most charismatic whales, and I'd love to see one. And a leatherback turtle. I think that's a bit of a long shot too. But we were out on the boat one day, I think it was the first year I worked on the Sealife Safaris, and one of the local fishermen spotted one. So we went sort of herring around trying to see if we could spot one, but of course it's like looking for a needle in a haystack really. And in a bit dives down and you're not going to see it, but those are my 2 that I would just love to see. I'm not really going to hold my breath, but you never know. You can
At least they're 2 things that have been sighted in Cornwall over the years.
They're not completely unachievable.
No. So we've got some other comments as well. So Emma Tudge said, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. We can't wait to come out on the boat this summer. And Olivia said, thank you from the Turner family in Birmingham.
Thanks, Turners.
Here you go. We've got another question. So this is from Emma Phillips. I've embarked on a touristy leisure tour before in Cornwall where the skippers have actually encouraged feeding of the seals for entertainment. What can be done to help discourage this behaviour, as some people are unaware that this is not the best interest of the seals and other marine life?
Yeah, so this is something that we actively discourage on our trips. Because, well, for obvious reasons, I'm often preaching to the choir here. But obviously it is quite dangerous. The seals don't need it. It attracts them towards boats, which can put them in harm's way. So if a seal becomes accustomed to approaching boats, the boat doesn't see them. The seal can easily get injured by the boat, hit by propellers, things like that. Also, people can get injured as well. So a seal can completely perhaps misjudge the distance to grab the fish. It could take off multiple fingers with ease, and they've got incredibly strong jaws. So just a little bit of education really. I think the message is starting to get through to more and more people, but I know that there are people who think it's just, you know, it's nice. The seal can come up close and then people can get a bit of interaction with them, but it's really not in the seal's best interest. You only need to look at what happened to the seal in St Ives Harbour that was struck by a boat, because she was so used to coming up to the boat to feed, and the boat didn't see her reverse and hit her with the propellers. She did survive, but it could have been a lot worse. So I always give that as an example to our passengers, to why seals are much better off just doing their own thing. They're so interesting and charismatic. You don't really need to coax them into anything to get lovely views of them. Just watch them do their own thing is much better than an artificial interaction.
I think you have evidence of that with them sort of climbing onto your boat as well.
Yeah, you don't want them too close.
And we have a question from Olivia. What was your favourite moment on the Sea Life Safaris?
Oh, it's really hard. I think probably seeing the Basking Shark, I think was probably my top moment. I've never seen one before, and just the size of them, they're such an unusual shark as well, with that big gaping mouth, and just watching them. So the thing is with mammals, they are kind of more aware of the boat. With seals and with dolphins, you know, they may interact with the boat or sort of look at you, but the Basking Shark's not interested in you at all. It's just swimming around doing its own thing, and you can just sit there and watch it do kind of perform its natural behaviour and feed. So it was quite humbling to see it, and yeah, I was just absolutely buzzing all day that day. And some of the little kids on board were like, "Oh no, it's a shark! It's scary!" So I took great pleasure in telling them how wonderful basking sharks are and how scary they aren't, and how chilled out they are and wonderful. I think that seeing the Minke Whale for the first time, that was very exciting. Seeing the thresher shark leap out the water, and seeing the sei whale, those are all up at the top. Difficult to pick a favourite.
It's a pretty good list of favourite things you've seen. So we've just got one more comment. So it's from David. He just says, "Thanks from David on the River Thames." So definitely getting people from far afield.
Oh, the Thames. Nice that we've attracted some people from further afield. I know there's quite a few familiar faces from Cornwall, but it's nice to know that there's a few others from elsewhere joining us as well.
So thank you
once
so much.
Able to move about, you can get out to the coast and enjoy a bit of your own marine life as well.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was great. It was really interesting, and I loved all your stories.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you all next week.